Let's picture this, ladies. You're standing in front of a glowing makeup aisle, whether it's in Los Angeles, a mall in Texas, or a luxury store in Dubai. The same bronzers, the same powders, the same soft pink blush you've probably swatched a dozen times. Nothing looks different. Nothing feels different. But here's the unsettling truth. One of those identical-looking products could be perfectly legal in Texas and completely illegal just a few miles away in California. Why? Not because of the brand, not because of the packaging, but because of something you can't see: a single molecule. In 2020, California passed the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act, and with it, the state has drawn a hard line against toxic ingredients in cosmetics. Let's get some context first. The law behind the ban. In 2020, California passed the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act. By the time it went into full enforcement on January 1st, 2025, it had redrawn the rules of an entire industry. Because here's what it actually does, and this is the part most people don't realize. It makes it illegal to manufacture, sell, deliver, or even hold for sale any cosmetic product that contains certain toxic chemicals. Not discouraged, not restricted, illegal. The law doesn't chase accidents. It doesn't target trace contamination from raw materials. It goes after ingredients that companies knowingly add to formulas: preservatives, stabilizers, texture enhancers. Now here's where it gets personal. Because the chemicals on that list, they're not obscure lab compounds. There are things that have been sitting in everyday beauty products for years. Take formaldehyde, for example. It is a known carcinogen. It's not always listed outright. You'll find it hiding behind formaldehyde-releasing preservatives in nail hardeners and hair treatments. Then there's mercury, a neurotoxin once used in skin lightening creams, capable of damaging the brain and kidneys with repeated exposure. And it doesn't stop there. The law targets phthalates like DBP and DEHP, chemicals linked to hormone disruption and reproductive issues. Parabens, specifically isobutyl and isopropyl parabens, have raised concerns for mimicking estrogen in the body. Then there are PFAS, often called forever chemicals because they don't break down. Even hair dyes come into focus, with compounds like phenylenediamines associated with allergic reactions and toxicity, and none of this came out of nowhere. California had already been watching. Back in 2006, the California Safe Cosmetics Program required companies to report products containing ingredients linked to cancer or reproductive harm. It was a warning system, a database. But the 2020 law, that was the shift. Because instead of just tracking the danger, California decided to remove it. Which brings us to the real tension in this story. Let's dive into the stories of these 7 products that are banned in California. But watch out, because you may find them elsewhere. Number 7. Johnson & Johnson Baby Powder. Let's talk about something deeply familiar, something many of us have seen sitting on a dresser, tucked into a baby bag, or dusted lightly onto skin without a second thought. Johnson's Baby Powder. Soft, clean, gentle. Or at least that's what we were told. But in October 2019, everything shifted. A specific batch, lot number 22318RB, from Johnson & Johnson was pulled from shelves after testing by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration detected chrysotile asbestos. Now pause for a second, because this is where it turns. Asbestos is a known human carcinogen linked to diseases like mesothelioma, lung cancer, and asbestosis. It's been heavily regulated for decades, and under California's strict cosmetic safety framework, its presence in any cosmetic product makes that product automatically illegal to sell. So how does something like this even happen? The answer lies in talc, the silky mineral that gives baby powder its signature feel. Talc is mined from the earth, often in close proximity to asbestos deposits. If the mining and purification processes aren't perfectly controlled, the two can mix. Invisibly, silently, without changing how the product looks, smells, or feels. That's what makes this so unsettling. Because the powder in that bottle, it didn't look dangerous. It didn't feel dangerous. Mothers used it. Women used it. Generations trusted it. And yet, inside that one lot, there were microscopic fibers, so small you'd never notice them, but perfectly capable of lodging in lung tissue and staying there for years. When the recall was announced, it wasn't just a product being pulled, it was a moment of reckoning. And here's where California changes the story. In many places, a recall is reactive, but California's approach is different. Under its toxic chemical laws, a product like this becomes legally unfit for sale. It cannot sit on shelves, it cannot be distributed. It effectively ceases to exist in that market. Scary, right? Well, the horror has just begun. Number 6. Klairs JoJo Siwa Makeup Set. The JoJo Siwa makeup set, sold by Klairs, carried the name of JoJo Siwa, a global teen icon with millions of fans, especially among children aged 6 to 14. That alone built trust. But in 2019, that trust cracked. Testing conducted by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration detected asbestos fibers in the eyeshadow component of the kit. Again, just like in the baby powder case, the source was traced back to talc contamination. And here's where it becomes even harder to ignore, ladies. This wasn't a product meant for occasional use. This was a children's cosmetic, a starter kit, something a young girl might swipe across her eyelids again and again, imitating what she sees older women do. The exposure is repeated, close to the eyes, close to the airways. Now, think about asbestos for a second. There is no established safe level of exposure. Once those microscopic fibers enter the body, they can lodge in tissue and remain there for decades. And that's exactly why California draws such a hard line. Under frameworks reinforced by the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act, a product like this isn't just concerning, it becomes legally unsellable. No reformulation, no shelf space, no exceptions. Number 5. Sally Hansen, Hard as Nails. Nail Hardener. Products like Hard as Nails. Nail Hardener by Sally Hansen have been staples for decades. Clear coat, quick dry. That satisfying glass-like finish that makes your nails look instantly polished, even without color. For many of us, it's not just cosmetic, it's care, repair, protection. But here's where the story shifts. Many traditional nail hardeners, especially older or certain global formulations, have relied on formaldehyde as a key ingredient. Yes, the same formaldehyde used in industrial preservatives. The same chemical is classified as a known human carcinogen. Formaldehyde works by hardening the nail plate, essentially cross-linking proteins to make nails feel tougher. And it does work. But that strength comes at a cost. Repeated exposure has been linked to skin irritation, allergic reactions, respiratory issues, and long-term cancer risks with high or prolonged contact. Now here's where California draws its line. Under the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act, formaldehyde and formaldehyde-releasing chemicals are banned in cosmetics. Not restricted, not labeled, banned. And enforcement began on January 1st, 2025. Which means a nail product containing formaldehyde? It doesn't get reformulated quietly. It doesn't get a warning sticker. It simply cannot be sold in California. But step outside that boundary, and the picture changes. In other U.S. states, and especially in international markets, nail hardeners containing formaldehyde or its releasers can still be found, sometimes under different ingredient names, sometimes in older stock, sometimes in cheaper, less regulated versions of the same product category. And that's the part that makes this feel a little unsettling. Because, unlike powders, you're not inhaling this. You're applying it directly, letting it sit, letting it bond, week after week. A clear coat doesn't feel dangerous. It feels clean, controlled, safe. But chemically, it can be one of the most aggressive formulations in your routine. And here's something most women don't realize. Nail products are one of the least strictly regulated categories globally. The US, unlike the EU, has historically allowed a wider range of chemicals in nail formulations, with oversight often happening after complaints or adverse reactions. So while California moves ahead, cutting off formaldehyde at the source, other regions are still catching up. And this is where your story expands beyond talc, beyond powders, beyond that visible cloud. Because now, the risk isn't floating in the air, it's sealed with a glossy finish. And the deeper truth? This isn't about one brand. Sally Hansen is just the familiar face in a much bigger system. Formaldehyde-based hardeners have existed across dozens of brands, across price points, across countries. So when California bans that ingredient, it's not targeting a single product. It's drawing a line through an entire category. Beauty isn't just about what we dust onto our skin. It's what we paint on, what we seal in, what we trust to protect us. Number 4. L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte Liquid Lipstick. Ladies, let's talk about something we carry everywhere. In our bags, in our pockets, sometimes even in our hands. Lipstick. The Infallible Pro Matte Liquid Lipstick by L'Oreal promises exactly what the name suggests. Long wear, transfer-proof color, a flawless matte finish that lasts through meals, conversations, and even an entire day. It's confidence in a tube, control, precision. But here's the part most of us never stop to think about. Whatever goes on your lips doesn't just stay there. Studies over the past decade have shown that the average woman ingests small amounts of lipstick daily, through eating, drinking, and even just licking her lips. Over time, that adds up, and that's where the concern begins. Because in long-wear and matte lipsticks, researchers have repeatedly detected PFAS, which is short for per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as forever chemicals. These compounds are used to create that smooth, water-resistant, ultra-durable finish. They repel oil, they resist smudging, they make color last, but they also don't break down. PFAS accumulate in the body over time and have been linked in scientific studies to hormone disruption, immune system effects, and increased risk of certain cancers. Once inside the body, they can remain for years. Now, here's where California steps in. Through laws like the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act and additional legislation targeting PFAS specifically, the state has begun restricting the intentional use of these chemicals in cosmetics. That means products formulated with PFAS for performance, like long-wear lipsticks, are increasingly being pushed out of California shelves unless reformulated. But outside California, the same category of products still widely relies on these compounds. They're sold across the US, Europe, Asia, and online marketplaces. And that's the quiet contradiction. A lipstick that feels lightweight, effortless, beautiful, but chemically engineered to stay on your lips at all costs, even if that means staying in your body too. So, the next time you swipe on that perfect matte shade, ask yourself, how much of it stays on your lips? And how much of it stays with you? Number 3. Maybelline Great Lash Waterproof Mascara. Now let's move to something even closer to one of the most sensitive areas of our bodies, the eyes. Speaking of the eyes, the Great Lash Waterproof Mascara by Maybelline is iconic, recognizable. That bright pink and green tube has been a staple since the 1970s. Millions of women have used it, trusted it, reached for it without thinking twice. Because waterproof mascara doesn't smudge or run. It survives tears, sweat, humidity, long days, and longer nights. But what gives it that staying power? Once again, we come back to PFAS, the dreaded forever chemicals. In waterproof mascaras, PFAS are often used to create that water-resistant film that locks pigment onto lashes. Without them, the formula would break down much faster. With them, it stays put. And that's exactly the problem, because these chemicals don't just resist water, they resist breakdown inside the body and in the environment. Studies have detected PFAS in blood samples across populations worldwide, with links to hormonal disruption, thyroid issues, immune effects, and long-term toxicity concerns. Now think about how mascara is used. Close to the eye, applied daily, sometimes flaking, sometimes migrating. Tiny particles can enter the eye area. They can tear the ducts, even the skin around them. And over time, repeated exposure adds up. California has started pushing back hard on this category. With expanding regulations tied to the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act and newer PFAS-focused bans, the state is moving toward eliminating intentionally added PFAS in cosmetics altogether, which means waterproof mascaras, especially older or unreformulated versions, face increasing pressure to change or disappear from California shelves. But again, step outside that line and the story shifts. Across much of the US and globally, waterproof mascaras containing PFAS are still widely marketed. And that's what makes this different from powders, because you're not just inhaling something, you're placing it near one of the most delicate absorbent areas of your body every single day. And here's the part that lingers. Mascara is about enhancement, definition, confidence. It opens the eyes, sharpens your look, makes you feel put together. But behind that definition is a formula designed to cling, resist, and persist. And sometimes, the very thing that makes it waterproof. It is also what makes it so hard to wash away in every other sense. Number 2. Rodan plus Fields Reverse Lightening Cream. Ladies, now we're stepping into something far more intimate than makeup. Not something we dust on, not something we wash off. Something we apply and trust to transform our skin. The Reverse Lightening Cream by Rodan plus Fields is positioned as a solution for uneven tone, dark spots, and dullness. Backed by dermatology branding and a polished clinical image, it promises brighter, clearer skin over time. It feels elevated, safe, almost medical, and for many women, that makes it easier to trust. But here's where the story shifts. Products in this category, especially skin lightening or tone-correcting creams, have historically relied on ingredients like hydroquinone. For years, hydroquinone was widely used in the US as a gold standard treatment for hyperpigmentation. It works by suppressing melanin production, gradually fading dark spots and evening out skin tone. But over time, concerns began to build. Studies and regulatory reviews linked long-term or improper use of hydroquinone to skin irritation, ochronosis, a condition that paradoxically darkens the skin, and potential carcinogenic risks under certain conditions. Countries across Europe and parts of Asia moved to restrict or ban it in over-the-counter cosmetics. And then the US followed. In 2020, under federal regulatory changes, over-the-counter hydroquinone products were effectively removed from the market unless approved through a formal drug application process. And in California, under the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act and broader chemical safety scrutiny, the pressure intensified even further, which means products in this category, especially those relying on older formulations or legacy ingredients, face increasing barriers to being sold in California without reformulation or regulatory approval. But outside California, the picture isn't as clear. Globally, skin lightening products still form a multi-billion-dollar industry, projected to exceed $12 billion. And while many brands have reformulated, others continue to sell products with questionable or restricted ingredients. And that's what makes this story different from powders or even makeup, because this isn't about a quick swipe. This is about long-term transformation. You apply it every night. You wait weeks, months. You trust the process. And that repeated exposure is where the risk lives. Hydroquinone-based or similar lightening systems don't just sit on the surface. They actively alter how your skin produces pigment. And when something interferes with a biological process that fundamental, even small risks become magnified over time. And ladies, let's be honest about the deeper layer here. This isn't just chemistry, it's psychology. The desire for clearer, brighter, more even skin. The subtle pressure to fix what isn't perfect. And the industry has built entire product lines around that desire. A cream that promises change. A formula that seems clinically backed. A routine that feels like self-care. But underneath it all, a chemical story that's still being rewritten, because the most dangerous products aren't always the ones that shock you. Sometimes they're the ones that quietly become part of your routine, night after night, until you stop questioning what's really inside them. Number 1. Revlon Color Silk Beautiful Color Hair Dye. This one feels deeply personal, not something you swipe on in seconds and forget. Something that sits, develops, transforms. Hair dye. The Color Silk Beautiful Color. Hair dye by Revlon has been a household staple for decades. Affordable, accessible, and widely trusted, it promises rich, even color, covering grays, refreshing your look, and giving you control over how you present yourself to the world. For many women, it's not just beauty. It is identity, confidence, reinvention. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Many permanent hair dyes, including widely used formulations in this category, rely on a chemical called phenylenediamine, or PPD, specifically p-phenylenediamine. It's what allows the color to penetrate the hair shaft and create that long-lasting, natural-looking result. Without it, permanent dye simply wouldn't work the same way. But PPD comes with a cost. It has been linked to severe allergic reactions, including redness, blistering, swelling of the scalp, and in extreme cases, life-threatening responses like anaphylaxis. Dermatologists have documented increasing cases of sensitivity over the years, especially with repeated exposure. And because hair dye is applied directly to the scalp, where absorption is higher, the risk becomes more personal, more immediate. Now step into California. Under the California Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act and related regulatory scrutiny, chemicals like phenylenediamines fall under intense evaluation due to their toxicity and sensitization risks. While not all uses are universally banned, California's framework aggressively restricts hazardous aromatic amines. Products containing higher-risk formulations or unsafe concentrations face removal, reformulation, or legal barriers in California's market, especially as enforcement tightens and future expansions loom. But outside California, the same category of hair dyes remains widely available. But we can always make better choices. Information is our basic right, especially when our health is on the line.